All right, we're a minute in. Let's go ahead and kick off. Just want to thank everybody for joining today. Really excited to have our partner OpenPrize on with us to talk about what we think is an incredibly valuable topic, turning product-led growth users into sales-ready cohorts, where to find additional pipeline within your data and within your existing freemium users. We think it's a multi-million dollar opportunity that's hiding in your database. And I've got Ed King on with me from OpenPrize to talk about a solution that we think can be high value and delivered quickly, and something that's proven, something that we've seen in our customer base, and OpenPrize is bringing to market to really help turn this into real revenue outcomes quickly for our clients. So without further ado, I'm going to jump into the agenda for today. We're going to introduce the concept, the problem, the challenge that we're trying to solve. We'll speak to what the opportunity is in the enterprise related to PLG, and really bringing together the multiple funnels that we see existing within most enterprise companies. What are the keys to success? What have we seen in our customer base? What's a success story from a customer who's made this transition and really mechanized the PLG funnel end to end using OpenPrize? And as Market One, the experts in revenue operations and revenue growth as a B2B agency focused on bringing all of these pieces together, we will walk you through a project roadmap of how to make this real for your enterprise and where to get started. So really excited again to have Ed King on with me. He's the CEO and co-founder of OpenPrize. Ed, do you wanted to say a quick hello and introduce
Yeah,
OpenPrize before we get started?
Mike, thanks. Yeah, Mike, thanks for having me on. Great to have this opportunity to tell people about this wonderful solution. I am the CEO and co-founder of OpenPrice. We are a data orchestration platform designed specifically for the operations team. We help to make your go-to-market data smarter through AI and automation.
Excellent. Awesome. And we're really honored to have Ed on. He and his team are working with Market One to bring multiple accelerators and solutions to market, really focused on that opportunity of bringing revenue out of your data and bringing signals together to create better buyer outcomes for B2B sales and marketing teams. I just want to frame the opportunity a bit. Most clients have databases far bigger than 1 million records in their PLG database. We've seen clients that have 30, 40, 50, 100 million users in their PLG database. But what if we can increase that conversion from unknown freemium to enterprise sales ready just by 0.1%? That opportunity in a million record database at just a $10,000 ACV is a $10 million revenue opportunity. And these are real outcomes. One of our clients has 30 million records in their PLG database, and making very small increases in conversion can lead to incredible short-term pipeline and revenue growth opportunities. But multiple funnels exist in most enterprises, and this is not a new problem. We just kind of want to think about what this means in terms of a target account that you might be experiencing your brand. For solution A, you've got a product-led motion where it's visit to sign up to activation to engagement and pay. In another part of your business, you might be serving the same company with a sales-led motion. You might be serving different markets altogether with product-led versus sales-led motions. But we know what it looks like. It looks something like this: target account to opportunity to close. And there are clients that we work with that have hybrid funnels that really are focused on bringing these two together, from product sign up to usage trigger to PQL to demo and conversion, and all three, right? And these are served by different stacks depending on the go-to-market motion. On the left, you've got more prevalence of data that's disconnected across some of these different layers of product-led. On the sales side, you've got more prevalence of ABM and CRM and MAP, which means you've got data in different stages across different platforms, and it's hard to orchestrate between them. And so this concept of when to expand from product-led, or what signal to listen for to shift to hybrid, or when to grow an account, or go in reverse. How do we orchestrate these things? That's a challenge, because that signal intelligence is often not connected and actionable, and those funnels are siloed. But what if we could, again, bring that together. Your PLG user data and marketing automation data, which is typically managed in a completely different set of systems like Marketo, Eloqua, Salesforce, with PLG databases that are typically managed elsewhere. We've built a solution along with OpenPrize that really solves this end to end as an engine. From identifying the right account and buyer in cohorts to prioritize when to trigger and when to orchestrate across those different funnel offers, how to activate that across digital touches, human touches, whether that's your CSM, your sales AE, marketing, and AI SDR, no matter the channel. How do we then monetize and optimize the right cohort, giving them the right offer, the right context, and making sure that we're actually growing the right segments of our database. A lot of this in our client base comes to actually how do we bring enterprise revenue out of these freemium users and developers or signups that may be across one of your target accounts, but unless you're bringing them together in this framework that will show you, um, it's hard to bring this all together as an engine. And so, uh, with OpenPrize, we've actually brought together a solution that takes all of these different things, combines those triggers into a model that's actionable, that allows us to see the usage trigger, the account fit, the life cycle stage, the first party engagement, the third party intent, to figure out then which cohorts drive which revenue actions at what time. And that's the nirvana, right? Is getting to this place where you can orchestrate across these different funnels using one platform and using what you already have inside of your enterprise. And that's where the challenges are. I'm going to pass it to Ed to talk about, what makes getting to what I just shared so hard. What's holding businesses back from doing this already?
Yeah, thanks, Mike. Yeah, PLG is not a new concept, right? It's been around for God, a couple of decades at least, right? Some of the most successful companies we know in the software space have pioneered and been very strong on the PLG motion. So it's not a new concept. So why are people in general, what we have seen out there, have done PLG funnel automation fairly poorly? And that's because PLG as a go-to-market motion has some very just fundamentally kind of building challenges that's been very difficult to overcome both technically as well as actually economically, right? The first
Yep.
big challenge is really very limited user demographics information. If you look at almost anybody's PLG database, it's basically one is a huge database and it's full, it doesn't have much information because of course the product team or the PLG team wants to have the lowest possible barrier to entry. Right? They want you to sign up. They want you to try the product. So they don't want to ask for anything more than usually just an email.
Right.
And now also they'll accept basically any email for the most part, especially if you are selling a technical product like a database, for example, or a developer's tool. And we all know developers, they use their personal emails, especially often is their GitHub sign in, right? Which usually is
Yep.
their personal email because they're on there involved with different open source project and all that. So you have this humongous database that just full of lack of information. Often it's just a personal email. Okay.
Yep.
And so you have no idea what company they're from, who they are. Second thing is we're dealing usually with a very siloed database. Mike touched on earlier, what we usually see is that you have your marketing, sales have their own tech stack, whether it's Salesforce, Marketo, right? And on the product side, that database is usually built into the product. Oftentimes that data gets dumped out into some kind of data warehouse, but it's almost never in the marketing automation stack. And part of the reason, and we'll talk about the next item, is the cost, right? Now, the fact that now you have these two data silos, and this is where another common problem we see is that the PLG database, data side, PLG side of go-to-market motion, oftentimes the only visibility they have is the product engagement data, right? Who signed up, how far have they progressed towards the user experience, and where did they get stuck, how many people dropped out. They have all that
Yep.
information, but they have no idea, are they actually reading our white paper that we've been offering, right? And same thing on the product side, on the marketing sales side, they have no idea if the products if this is actually even a user. I don't know how many times we heard a customer complain that they literally will have a salesperson cold calling a prospect, and the prospect is like, "Yeah, I use your product," and SDR
Right.
is like, "Really, really?"
Don't you know I
Now,
have 20 people on my team trialing your product right now?
exactly. Now, imagine knowing that would be have been a very different conversation, right?
Absolutely.
And that
And
actually
you
leads
make a
to,
great point, Ed. Not to interrupt, just you make a
yeah,
really
no
good point
problem.
that there is data here. It's not to say that your enterprise is out there. We know that you have data coming from the product database, maybe likely into CRM or in a database or warehouse. The key point that we see is that map integration and the cost prohibition tied to that,
Yes,
because it is
yes,
so difficult to manage at scale. And it has become easier to store enterprise data and put it into a CDP. But what we found is it's the context along with it. It's maybe an email with
absolutely.
some of the product journey information. It's not tied to all the stuff that's happening in marketing and sales and in ad tech platforms potentially that are tied to account-based marketing and field marketing and demand generation and sales activity. So I think it's a really, really key important point that that is where we see clients falling down with this, is not that they aren't trying to do this, but that it's that piece where we see a lot of effort being put in and not the right tech stack or orchestration layer underneath.
Correct. So beyond all the technical difficulty we talk about, right? One thing what people often overlook, there's also a cost barrier here to do this right. So, of course, when we talk about double-digit millions, even triple-digit million databases, if you just do the basic math on try to enrich a database like that gets pretty expensive pretty fast. For most customers we have seen that alone will just stop a project, right? Because just the ROI, they're just too hard. It's too much a commitment. And so people kind of think, kind of do little in driven drafts here. The other things that you talk about, anybody who run a marketing automation platform, they charge by number of records, right?
Yep,
And most of you who live with Marketo, Eloqua, Pardot, just imagine what your bill will look like if you're going to put even say 10 million records into those databases. And
100%.
most of them are not even ready to engage,
Yep,
right? So both of those again just makes the cost really high. And the last one is really there's also complete disjoint between how the PLG side go to market and how enterprise sales go to market, right? Because this lack of visibility and the isolated data silos, the PLG motion actually looks very much like how marketing kind of dimension works maybe 10 years ago. Is very focused on the individual person, right? Has
yep,
no purview over into how that person fits into the buying committee and which account they belong to. So a lot of what we see
yep,
is basically the entire funnel motion, the funnel stages, right? Like PQL and stuff like that. It's all based on how active is this individual user, right? And
sure.
that's not how enterprise sales look at the world. Enterprise sales wants to know what are all the users from this account? Who are the decision makers? Who are the influencers, right? Unless you can get to that level of insight and be able to package up, if you will, a cohort to be enterprise sales ready, this whole thing says, hey, we got a user that's been pretty active for the last 20 days that's tossed over the wall in sales. See what you
It's
can do. Oh, by the way, start by looking up, try to find their phone number, or
and
even
there's
figure out what
four other
company they're
places to
from.
look. All the signals, right? Oh,
Exactly.
go to Zoom Info, go to look at what they've done online. And the other thing you bring up is of course we can throw data enrichment against this. But where
Yes.
and how and where is there high quality cohorts to pursue? So, I think solving this is both a process and technology problem. Of course, Market
Yes.
One, we bring the process expertise, the know-how, the how do we navigate and walk this path to get the right outcomes activated fast so that we can drive revenue from it. So it's great to solve the data and automation, but how do we turn it into revenue quickly? How do we solve the problem that is on this screen? Like,
Yeah. So,
walk
so
us
these
through
are
it.
correct. Let's do that. Let's go to the next slide. So these are the four biggest challenges we see around how do you mechanize the entire PLG go to market, right? So let's talk about what exactly is a typical PLG funnel and what are the individual steps you need to automate or mechanize to turn this into a lights out, reliable, revenue generating, pipeline generating machine, right? So let's start at the very top. So you have this, again, we talk about this very large database, raw freemium database, right? Low quality, high quantity. So the first thing you have to do is called identity resolution. Who are all these Gmail, Yahoo, I'm showing my age now, and Hotmail users, right? Who are these people? What company are they from? Who are they? What's their job title? So the first thing is try to resolve the identity of these people. But a challenge here, again, is not, it's a huge database, right? So how the key here is how can you do this at a price that's actually feasible? To say, hey, even if you have to spend maybe 3 or 4 cents per identity resolution, again, do the math. That number, that budget goes out of whack very fast.
Yeah.
So what
Yep.
we have done here, we have worked with data vendors for over 10 years now. So we have some exclusive partnership that we have that are enabling us to deliver this type of identity resolution at high volume, at scale, at a budget that won't break your bank. So that's the first thing.
Yep.
Just find out who are these people, what's their email address, right? And
Yep.
along every part of this funnel, we believe you should have strong KPIs to understand the performance of this funnel. And the Market One team has done some great work defining what KPIs the business should be tracking. Mike, do you want to talk about some of this?
Absolutely. I'll just bring up a few on each of these funnel stages and each of these steps. Here it's identification rate and coverage, percent coverage matched to domain, being able to track that rate across different data sources and not being able to have that independent of vendor. So zoom in, all of your vendors have that, match capabilities. Being able to have that tracked for you against all of those different data endpoints and actually be able to track the percentage matched to domain, the percent enriched with the right data, and then the percent of profiles with observable, what we call observable signals or signal coverage across those companies that those profiles are matched to. So identity resolution at the contact and then company level in reverse, and then doing that at a, yeah, absolutely. Those are the three that we normally track. Um, and then I'll keep going ahead here step by
Yep,
step.
yep. Let's go to the next one. So now, once you have resolved the identity of these people, right? So now you have their business email. So now you can start doing what we call company cohorting, right? So now instead of knowing, hey, I got a user called edking@gmail.com. Now I know, hey, wait a minute. We have actually 20 users from the same email domain, right? That's active users of our product. So that's the next step. How do you now, once you resolve it, being able to start to group these users together, right? Based on not just their identity, but also potentially start to turn those domains into company information. This is where you not only you can using both AI and enrichment sources, you can now start to gather you can match them to any existing account data you already have in your CRM. Or
Yep.
if you don't have that information, you can do real-time enrichment again through either AI or traditional sources. Now you got a full profile of, okay, fine. Not only I know there's 20 people on OpenPrice that's actually active users of our product, but is OpenPrice even a target company that within my IC? Do I care about this company, right? And until what we just talked about this, not you can't even get to this point. But that's first important thing is understand that it's not just you already now progress from just looking at one user, how busy is this one user, instead of say now you say, hey, I have 20 users that are all use the product maybe as some moderate amount, right? That's a much
Yep.
more interesting data point than, hey, I have one hyperactive user, right?
Sure. Absolutely.
So,
And
Mike, what
and
about the KPIs?
absolutely. No, I mean, it's tracking match rate again, cost, and then you're looking here at how do we bring users forward, match, and then group, and then do that at scale, and then build a data structure, almost a scaffolding that drives the rest of the funnel, so that you're looking at how fast and cost effectively are you moving people through the first stages to get to a point where we can now talk about how do we talk to them, how do we run the right play, what action do we take and how do we determine if they're ready? We've got to understand who they are and make sure that we're tracking how is the database progressing in terms of completeness and quality over time.
Absolutely. Okay. So next step, this is actually an optional step. It does depend on what kind of product you sell. So, if you have a product that can be sold into different departments, right? Or the new fancy word these days is buying groups, right? So if let's say you sell a project management solution, you can sell to marketing, sales, finance, and HR. And if you're targeting larger companies, and so each one of these departments essentially a separate buying group. So you can't just stop at the company cohort level. You now need to go to a level deeper. Says okay, because the different departments, the way you engage, right, like you just said, may be different by buying group, right? Your use case for the marketing team may be very different from your use case for the finance team. So this is where if you do have this need, the next level, what you want to automate here is actually after you do the enrichment on the account level, you now actually need to extend that down to the contact level. You need to get people's job titles, right? In this case, job title can help you understand what buying group do they belong to. Is this somebody on the marketing side, or is this somebody on the HR side? So you can do this next level of cohorting. So beyond the company, but now you can cohort them based on the job title and into the different buying groups. And to do that, you need to get the contact information updated with stuff like job title. Then you need to essentially automate segmentation, right? How do I take job title, and guess what? People can get pretty creative about their job title, and often it's not standardized, right? This kind of free form data. How do you make it more usable to turn, for example, a job title segment into job function, job level? Then you can, based on say job function, job level, or maybe even additional information like what product they're using, what feature they're using, being able to then assign people the right persona to the right buying group. So, for example, and remember, a single person may belong to multiple buying groups with
Yeah,
wearing different hats. For example, right, I may be a decision maker in marketing, but I may be an influencer in for an IT purchase for the IT department. So being
that's what
able
we see
to
the most of. Yeah, right there.
Yeah. So being able to, help you. So this is where a market one team can help you understand your buying group motion. What's your definition? Who are the buying personas? How many buying personas? Right. And but then once you have that definition, again, how do you automate the entire process from just a person's information and add all this richness about what's their buyer persona and which buying groups are they associated with?
100%. And we're looking here on KPIs that really are trailing the stage before it, right? So you're looking at trailing KPIs that are measuring the graduation out of a stage here. So this is the KPI tied to company to buying group cohort. We talked through then grouping that in the next step and then measuring that as you start to cohort, right? And as you start to score. And so I think, there's a multi-step process here for a reason, because we need to look at not just the enrichment and do we have the right contacts and are they enriched? Do we have the right title and can we convert that using AI, which we have a whole bunch of different kits for? How do we get 20 different fields out of two based on connecting them to a data source and then enriching and then also mapping them to other things that might drive buying group, product, content, sales engagement, marketing personalization. But as you start to group those buying cohorts, you're looking at completeness, you're looking at role coverage, you're looking at buying group ability to engage this buying group across different product areas. And most firms don't have a map for that sitting around, at least what I've found. Some that are really, really far into this motion have that at the enterprise level, but it's not necessarily mapped back to the product-led motion. To the earlier point of the webinar, those are separate. And so looking at completeness, coverage gaps, and also then putting a scoring algorithm around all of that is where we can now go next, and that's the concept of cohort scoring, Ed. So this is really where OpenPrize becomes super powerful, not just because we can do everything before it in one place, but those recipes for scoring need to be independent, oftentimes, of what you might be doing in Marketo or in Salesforce or in your product database or in your offer decisioning system. You need to score across the account, the cohort, and then also the offer tied to all these different signals. And that's where we see a lot of benefit and power in what you guys are doing at OpenPrice, and specifically in this stage of the funnel.
Correct. So like Mike said, right? So once you have the cohort created, people assigned to the cohort, the next decision, of course, which cohort is interesting? Is it ready? Is it in the market, right? And this is where the traditional silo approach really falls down because the PLG side usually the only thing they see is how much are they using the product. So that's the only signal they have. This is where we can now, because you now have identified the company, you have identified the whole core. This is where also we can now link your go-to-market database, your Marketo database, your other engagement data. We can now tie your marketing and sales engagement data and even third-party intent signals, be able to tie all that in with the product usage data. So now you truly are able to score the individual cohorts at a 360-degree view. So not only do you have their entire profile, like Mike said, at both the account level and the contact level, at the buying group level, you also have all their engagements across the different channels: marketing engagement, sales engagement, product engagement, right? Even third-party intent data and technographic intent spend, all that stuff. You can now really have this complete both scoring both on just the fit as well as their behavior, right? So this takes your scoring to it that is really a huge jump up compared to if you just all you'd have is product signals. So this really now help you assess, do I have a cohort that sales will find worthy of investing their time and resource into? Right?
Absolutely. And and this is all again for people that are identified, that are then enriched, that are scored, that are grouped, that are modeled against. But then we need to package it and find the missing people, and that's what this also can do at scale with automation. How many times does, maybe you can do the first steps well, and you are passing PQLs, or what we call now, what I really look at is PQAs, which is a product qualified account, showing certain
Mhm.
signals now grouped into cohorts. But in the past you may have passed over a PQL, right? Which is maybe even three users at the same account, and said this account is trending. Um, the ability to group that into buying group cohorts with messaging and why you should engage this person based on the signal and the intent and the marketing engagement, that's where we see a lot of firms needing to step to that next level. But it's also identifying and going and acquiring. This is a developer, and you have two other people in this role. You have maybe this other person at the account, which is a manager in finance. You don't have the CFO, and you don't have the COO, and you don't have the head of IT or developer operations. You don't have those key buying group members. Let's make sure not to ask the SDR to go do that, or the AE to go do that,
Correct.
or
And
make
this
them
is
go look
where,
at Salesforce to see if they know those people already, because that's, I
correct.
mean, 25-30% a day down the drain right there.
So usually up to this point, right? If you don't do the proper packaging, this is where the leads get thrown over the wall and say, my guy, you say, hey, here's two leads, here's three leads, individual sales, go do something, right?
Yep.
And sales always like, yeah, right. And what they really want to know, again, if you're selling an enterprise product, with enterprise price tags, for sales to really be effective and not spending 30% of their time doing their own research, right? What you want to do is what I call, you want to put a cohort together, put a bow on top, right? So you want to understand, okay, here's all the active users we have. By the way, here's a summary of their activity, right? So again, this is when the SDR gets on the phone with the prospect that she can now speak eloquently about you being a freemium user, right? How much of the product are you using? What features are you use the most? Maybe you run into some paywalls because there's some features that you're interested in, right? All that information about the usage can now be packaged together. Hey, not only I know there's 20 users for OpenPrice that are using our freemium product, you guys all using feature 1 and 2 and 3 together.
Right.
right? Then, of course, for sales to be really effective, you want to say, okay, fine. Not only I got 20 active users, let's go through my persona list. All right, I
Yep.
got the users. I got the who are the influencers? Who are the budget owners? Who are the decision makers? You know what? Let's go with an example I've been using. Let's say you sell a database product to developers, right? Pretty much all your users going to be a bunch of programmers and engineers. Guess what? They don't own the budget. They don't sign the PO, right? You need the director of IT, you need the director of engineering, you need the CIO, you need the VP of product, right? If you really want to start a very well orchestrated, efficient enterprise motion. So in this case, you now need to identify what the gaps are in each one of these buying group cohorts, and then you need
Yep.
to go source the missing contact information. You don't have the CIO's contact. This is where we can, through our automated acquisition features, we can help you find the missing contacts, bring them in, again, properly segment them, assign them to the account, to the cohort. So now you actually create a complete package, right? So by the time you
Yeah.
send this over to sales, enterprise sales, I'm ready to go,
I totally
right?
agree. And this is where so many clients also need help in turning, tools like Outreach and SalesLoft and AI SDRs like Qualified and data from Sixth Sense and even conversational agents from some of these platforms and Marketo who can automate outreach. They need to know what to say, what context, and how to look at it from a buyer group perspective. So this data model then becomes really portable across the rest of your stack to drive revenue actions, right? So that bow on top, all of those prompts, those packages of what to do with this and what to do with it in the context of who you are. You're a CSM, so you should talk about these usage features and talk about these ways to use the product. You're an AE tied to this account. Here's maybe what you should say to the CIO. And a few things, here's a pack to now go engage with that person in whatever your chosen SEP is. And here's a campaign to send to the 3 people in the account or 4 people that aren't worth the high value sales touch, but maybe an AI SDR takes that over, right? So revenue actions tied to this, we know you've got 5, 6 different platforms to consider there. That's why this is so important to own inside of the marketing ops and PLG operations engine, because this drives revenue actions that are then very agile. And that's where we see another number of customers falling down. So just
Yeah.
in the interest of time, we're kind of talking about automating this end to end. Let me pause before we go sort of wrap up the actual technical side of this. And Ed, if there's, before we move forward, I wanted to let you jump in there.
Yeah, the key point here is that we went through what the funnel looks like and what are individual steps within this automation steps involved. The key here is that you want to be able to automate this entire funnel on a single technology platform. Try to do this with by duct taping, 5, 6 different technologies is going to be very difficult.
That's where we see multi-year projects, POCs, and AI POCs that work well in isolation. You might be doing fantastic AI POCs in a certain platform, but when you start to bring this all together, that's where it gets a bit gnarly and challenging, where process becomes important, where data and all of this needs to be brought together. Doing that in either completely custom built or in platforms not purpose built for this, or trying to shove it into your map system or CRM, that's where we're seeing the biggest hairball and spaghetti diagrams that need to be unplugged. And getting it right it means revenue fast. Like this isn't a year or 2 year project. This is something that can deliver revenue benefits in months, not quarters, in our experience. So let's talk about those benefits, and then let's talk about a couple customer examples too, just in terms of looking at the clock here.
Yeah, so it's really the benefit of doing this that you can now have you can economically actually make this funnel work. Like we talked about earlier, this is as much of a technical problem as was an economical issue, right? So this solution solves that, and being able to, again, at the end of the day, the reason you have a BLG motion is really to be able to feed the enterprise sales motion, and that's what this achieves, right? You want to basically hand off the most complete, ready to go, and cohorts and make your sales team as efficient as possible, right? So let's quickly talk about a customer example. So because the customer we're talking about here is a Vimeo. A lot of them probably you guys are familiar with their video platform. They actually at the MASA and Open Conference for 2 years, they talk about their journey through this PLG mechanized motion. So very quickly about for folks that are not familiar with the Vimeo, that they started off as a B2C business back in 2004 and had quite a bit of success there. And in 2017, they acquired made some acquisition, which started their enterprise business. Today, they're actually very much of an enterprise software company, and that, as you can imagine, came with a bunch of the challenges that we just talked about. Next slide, please. So very quickly they found is that, oh my God, this enterprise software beast is completely different from the consumer business, the PLG business, right? It's exactly what we talked about earlier. On the consumer side, you got this ginormous database. For them, for example, depends on if you look at just the active user who are uploading videos, it's in the mid double digit millions of users. If you look at everybody who has an account that actually view videos, we're into the triple digit million records. So huge databases. And of course, on the what they call sales assist side, this is the enterprise sales motion, much smaller database, right? So they immediately find that we got a challenge here. By the way, like we mentioned earlier, two completely different tech stack, two completely different silos. Next slide, please. Not just size difference. Also, they immediately discover, oh my God, yes, on the PLG side, very little information. That's the sign up form on the left if you want a consumer PLG account. This is the sign up form on the right hand side if you want to have an enterprise conversation, right? So, and why do they have a form that long? Because historically, how else are you going to get all the information on the left into the information you need on the right to have a meaningful sales conversation? Right. So again, very different animals, very silo, complete separate processes historically. Next slide, please. So when they first try to bridge the gap, a lot of elbow grease. Literally, they have analysts going into the system and try to analyze usage data. But again, all they can see is the usage data. Don't have anything on the product side. Can bridge the identities from both databases. So literally just going through, looking for active users, download the list, and as this graphic shows, throw the file over the wall to the sales side and say, hey, why don't you go call these people? And they literally said immediately the first response from SDR is like, I don't even have a phone number, and I don't know what the business email is. What am I supposed to do with this? Right. So next slide, please. Of course, then they gone through the journey with us and build out a lot of the automation steps. So what it looks like today is that their PLG database historically, due to its size, lives now in Snowflake and a kind of S3 combination. And of course, they are Marketo and Salesforce shop. And what OpenPrice has done for them is create internally the project code name is called Data Bridge. That's you see a bridge. So we basically link these two databases and automate the waterfall funnel that as we have talked about so far. So next slide, please. So what they have done so far is a lot of the stuff we just talked about, right? Being able to now really harvest the product signals that they have always had, but being able to then now enrich all the prospect in that PLG database with the richness of the company information, business information, be able to then unify that data from what's in their Marketo and Salesforce with what's in Snowflakes, create this 360 view of the customer, create these cohorts, and at the end, the goal again is really how can you create the best ready to sell to cohort for the enterprise sales team.
Yeah, absolutely. It's daunting when you look at, how much is possible, but also how much needs to get done. And so that's where I want everybody to know there are some keys to success and what we call sort of bite-sized chunks to taking this from what we've shared today to something that's real and production grade within a few quarters. And I'm going to take the next 5 minutes of the webinar just to share more about the how than the what and the why we should do it. You've heard take a phased approach before. course, right? But what does that really mean? It means let's take a look at the data within PLG and MAP and CRM, and using a signal intelligence framework we developed along with OpenPrize, we can understand what that looks like very quickly and understand what the use cases are so that we can define what the right activations need to be, where the revenue could exist given what we see in the data, then taking that to the stakeholders who need to drive action and activity and buy-in, right? So sales might need to work differently. Product might need to share data differently. Marketing wants more MQAs out of their intent platform, more marketing source pipeline, more inbound potentially. What are some of the use cases that they can contribute to drive more impact on pipeline? And then RevOps, how do we get more time back, take admin work out to the Vimeo use case, less spreadsheets, more bridging the gap automatically, but leveraging the existing stack. I don't want those on the call to feel like this is a massive new tech project. This is actually more of a leveraging and wrapping of what you already have. That's where we've seen the fastest time to value. So automate where the biggest gap exists in that funnel, whether it's listening or identifying the right people. Is it identity? Is it buyer group cohorting? Is it, the fact that we don't know where necessarily to activate the right experiences or use cases or plays? Maybe how do we optimize what we already have? Those are things that we can look at to drive where the tech needs to solve the gap. And then let's activate rapid POCs to drive revenue impact quickly. So the phased approach we see is we plan with our strategists first. We look at that data, we look at the funnel, we look at the segments and buyer groups that many folks have today. And then we really get aligned on not just the KPIs, but the use cases. We design experiences in that first release. We really focus on things like always on PQAs, making sure that we have a funnel of PQAs feeding enterprise sales motions, making sure that we have a sales lead management feedback process tied to that, making sure that there's offer and message design around what are we going to say to each of these cohorts, and then do we have the touch points orchestrated to be able to deliver on this. And once we have alignment on that design, we're in a rapid release motion. Right? So automate, create the pipelines to make sure that that funnel we talked about runs smoothly between the PLG, marketing automation, CRM system. A lot of times it's aligning MAP and PLG for quick wins is where we see a lot of opportunity to get V1 automated PLG funnel in place against which we can activate those two POCs, right? So usually it's a enterprise, early warning system tied to opportunity creation. That's one high value one. Another is looking at automated enrichment um, and making sure you have buyer group cohorting and cross sell. So new sales teams or different sales teams tied to different products. How do we automate that? Those are two use cases to drive then that revenue impact for us to keep going and start to optimize monthly. And so in our experience, when you get this right, you're optimizing those initial, revenue paths or revenue motions monthly. We have to look at cohorts and scores and conversion rates and a whole pack of KPIs to look at that we can recommend, and then try to get one new use case in quarterly, at least one. And use case means multiple journeys and multiple flows, but use case meaning a revenue go-to-market action that we can take with sales or service to drive either churn prevention, upsell, cross-sell, enterprise sales momentum. This is something we've done with our clients. And what we wanted to offer before we run out of time here is taking a next step. Oftentimes, it even helps to get some framing around how we might take these next steps and what that looks like. So we're offering a 60-minute session to really just understand what your challenges are, your current state, understand the opportunities that may exist what you've talked about internally or have been trying to solve. And we'll come back in a few days and deliver use case ranking, a point of view on the tech and where we think we might be able to get started. And again, just come back to that ROI. If there is even a 0.1% increase in conversion we can bring, we'd love to explore it with you and see if it's an opportunity to impact revenue in 2026 in a big way. So with that, I just wanted to wrap up on time and be respectful of everyone's calendar. But that's all we had in terms of content today. And Ed, I just wanted to pause and give you an opportunity to share some final thoughts and comments before we sign off here.
Yeah, no, appreciate having me on again. This is if you, when you look at the ROI here, right? This is I haven't seen too many go-to-market project out there with ROI this straightforward, this impactful, right? Just the sheer size of these databases and the amount of the investment people have already done into the PLG program. This is really that last mile to monetize this database, and the impact speaks for itself.
Absolutely. Great having you on, Ed. Fantastic product and solution, and we're excited to go to market together with you on this and help our joint clients make this real going into next year. So thanks again, and excited to work together on this with all of you out there. Thanks again for everybody attending. Happy holidays. Have a fantastic new year, and we hope to see you soon in 2026.
Happy holidays, everybody.
Thanks again.